Thank you, Ini, for that report there, painting a nice picture of what's played out so far with fiscal policy in Nigeria and, getting an outlook for 2026. Well, that's tomorrow, and countdown to January 1st. So many things starting January 1st, 2026. But now we're taking a conversation to find out how the consumer in Nigeria has performed in 2025. As we look toward the near future, the continent's retail sector is standing at a fascinating crossroads there. Traditional price is king mantra is being challenged by more nuanced consumer psychology, one that, prizes human connection, seamless convenience, and cultural resonance just as much as a good deal. In this conversation, I will unpack how retailers can navigate the complexities of economic volatility while leveraging cutting-edge technology like AI to build deeper, more resilient bonds with their customers. Joining me for this conversation, right here in the studio, I have Professor Uchenna, Professor of Marketing at the Lagos Business School and Director, Africa Retail Academy. Joining me right here. Great to have you on the show, sir. Good morning.
Good to be here in person for the first time.
Fantastic. I've always had you most of 2025, via Zoom, with your own nice studio, too, right there. It's great to have you here. And, definitely that report painted a picture of what's played out with fiscal policy in Nigeria in 2025. Everyone's trying to get a sense of what's going to happen, in 2026. And, before we get into it, I'd like to get your view on how the Nigerian consumer has fared, in your opinion, in 2025.
2025 wasn't an easy year for consumers. There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of pain because of the high level of inflation. But there was also a lot of resilience. Nigerian consumers are very smart in their spending behavior, and they were able to reposition their spending habits to appeal to the situation. And I think that they are more resilient now towards the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. And we're seeing that even in the way people are spending at Christmas time, that even though things were tough, somehow there's still something left to spend in a bigger way in this season.
Right, and I can imagine I just got back, coming into Nigeria and also spending. I'm sure they were more resilient.
Exactly.
We're going to get all of that data, at some point. But, let's look at consumer loyalty, so far. How loyal, were the consumer? Because you said they did, try to look for better deals and all of that. And I'm sure that would somehow trump loyalty.
Exactly. So it's very interesting. I don't know if you know that Nigeria ranks as one of the countries with the highest level of customer disloyalty in the world. So currently, globally, 5 in every 10 customers is brand disloyal, globally. And the projection is that in 5 years, it will get to 6.5. But in Nigeria, the current number is 7, and in 5 years, it's expected to get to 8. Now, the interesting thing is why disloyalty is rising. What is fascinating is that price is not really what is driving more disloyalty in Nigeria. It's more about the inability of brands to deliver a consistent experience at scale. Experience has taken over pricing when it comes to loyalty. And I think that is something very interesting to keep an eye on as we move into 2026, because those brands that are able to deliver a unique experience at scale are the ones that are going to keep customers loyal. Disloyalty in Nigeria, I call it polygamous disloyalty, in the sense that today you have people loyal to a brand, tomorrow they are elsewhere, but next week they may come back. And it's not only about price. In fact, we're seeing people who left because they wanted cheaper alternatives coming back to more expensive alternatives because the experience is better. So experience is key at the end of the day.
Right, and how do you think, brands can, key into this experiential, factor when it comes to, keeping consumers loyal?
So there are 3 things about experiences that brands often forget. And at the same time, these are the 3 top pain points of Nigerian consumers. I think the first one is there are a lot of service providers and brands that overpromise but underdeliver. So you see that in their websites, you see that in their adverts. You just don't get, there's a big gap between what was promised and what you get. And I think that's something that causes a lot of frustration. The other issue that is also there is the way complaints are managed. And this is critical for an experience. Customers complain about something they don't like, but then the response time, the way is as if sometimes service providers behave as if they are doing customers a favor. And people are becoming more sensitive to that. And then the other one is the lack of empathy. So these three issues put together are critical building blocks for a remarkable experience that customers and consumers are looking for in Nigeria. And when that is not there, it shouldn't be surprising that loyalty is being affected.
Right, and when you talk about that, we've seen instances where maybe a consumer is not satisfied, with a product or service, and makes complaints. But the sellers are normally they're not quick to say, what, let's replace this.
Yeah.
For you.
Absolutely. In fact, there's some data that shows that currently Nigeria is one of the countries with the highest level of, the highest service appetite. Let me put it this way. The customer's appetite to be served is way, way, way up there. But the service response level is way, way, way down there. So there's this big gap between service expectation and service response, that any business that is able to fill that gap will already be at an advantage.
Right, and I'm sure some of them, they're reluctant to replace products and goods and all that because they don't want it to affect their profit.
Yeah.
So are we going to see impact on profitability if we see some of these producers actually say, what, we're here for that consumer, we're ready to replace whatever. If you're not satisfied with this product, we'll replace it immediately. How does that impact profitability, going forward for T-Mobile?
Well, profitability at the end of the day will come from delivering unique value that the customer can identify. So, and value in the end is offering a remarkable experience that you can replicate over and over again. And when you're able to do that, you can command a higher pricing than your competitor. And therefore, profitability, if people are able to manage their costs very well, will be assured. I think the problem is that a lot of businesses focus too much on short-term thinking as opposed to long-term strategic thinking when it comes to engaging customers. We want to make money now. But the real value is on working towards the long term, offering unique value by offering remarkable service experience.
Right, and when you're interacting with a company, most of the time you have to deal with the salespeople. Does it go beyond just making that sale?
Well, it goes beyond it. It's good you've brought this up because the latest data, and I found it surprising, shows that Nigerian consumers are more loyal to the salesperson selling brands than the brands they are selling themselves. We've seen this across several sectors: banking, hospitality, retail. People are even ready to move with their favorite salesperson to a competitor's outlet because of that relationship that has been built. So salespeople are not just there to sell, they're critical experience providers, relationship builders. The way they communicate, even the way they talk, is part of the overall experience around the brand. And that is why, as we enter into 2026, it's very important for people to take a second look at how they manage talent. Not just the salespeople, but everybody involved in delivering a unique experience, because that will matter a lot for loyalty.
Yeah, because I've had instances where I just, said, I'm not buying from this brand because of the experience I had.
Absolutely.
With a salesperson. And, at this point, how is that within the brand's control? Making sure that the salespeople actually, do right when the brand owners are not watching.
I think it is. The problem that we see is a lot of brands focus on the external, the look and feel, the external campaigns and adverts and experientials, looking at the external side of their image and not paying as much attention on the internal side of branding. Those who are going to project that image, how much they connect with the brand. And this, once there's this mismatch, what you are going to find is that the customers, what they see when they interact with the brand externally through adverts will be different from what they experience when they walk into an outlet or they engage with people directly selling that brand. So there's a need to close that gap, and it's within the control of the brands to take better care of the people who sell and push those brands.
Right, and right here in Nigeria, we've seen inflation, according to the data, that's been trending downward by 14%, so far, but there's still that affordability, issue, at this time. How can, these brands, navigate, pricing strategies, going into 2026? Because it seems the affordability issue might still be there.
Obvious, it's going to be there.
Right.
I think one very important thing that brands need to focus on is to know that pricing should be based on real insights, consumer insights, and not just cost and margin considerations, which is easier to do. We always believe that we tend to believe the biggest reason why people are not engaging with brands is affordability. But the truth is that it's not just about affordability. It's about offering something unique, something unexpected that solves a problem at an affordable price. And let's not forget that Nigerian consumers want the highest possible value at the lowest possible price. So how you manage that dynamic is very important. And Nigeria is not one market. So depending on the region where you are, how people respond to pricing, how they behave when it comes to pricing will vary. So we really need to think differently about how we see affordability and pricing in Nigeria,
right?
Given what's going on.
Right, and some brands here, they sell domestically and they also export.
Yep.
At this time, we've heard instances, especially from Mr. Dangote, that the reason why the cement is cheaper, abroad, and more expensive here is because of what he has to go through with taxes,
yeah,
in Nigeria. So at this point, you have to manage price sensitivity of consumers, especially when there are other competitors, at this point. What's the strategy,
Very good question. So the first thing to know is that price sensitivity in Nigeria defies logic. So price sensitivity, you cannot plot it along one line. The way people in northern Nigeria demonstrate price sensitivity is quite different from how people in the southwest demonstrate price sensitivity. And the first place to start is to understand those dynamics. Also, there's variation in how people at different income brackets demonstrate their price sensitivity. And I think the biggest surprise for me this year is that there are a lot of people who sell brands and brand owners who are even more price sensitive than the customers they are selling to. And that is coming from the fact that they believe that affordability is the only reason driving why people want to buy. And because of that, they build everything around discounts, loyalty schemes that are price focused. And guess what? Only 9% of Nigerian consumers really stay loyal because of discounts. Only 9%. And so there's a need to rethink what price sensitivity really means and how it affects the way people should price and when they should change their prices. All
right, so I'd like to, get your crystal ball out now. Going into 2026, what are you seeing for the average consumer, in Nigeria and Africa, and, the retailers, the businesses? What are you seeing?
Okay, so again, one big thing there are two big things that will happen in 2026. One is we know our new tax law will finally take effect. And then we know it's a pre-election year. And we know what happens in terms of spending behavior. People become more cautious when it comes to these kinds of scenarios. One interesting thing that we've seen in 2025 is the way spend priorities have evolved. So beer and spirits ended up being one of the fastest selling and the highest, let's say, spent items in Nigeria. Don't ask me why Nigerians like spirits or beer. But then the other interesting one is how childcare spending overtook personal health care spending and how transportation spending overtook spending on education and communication this year. What do I foresee for next year? You are still going to have the same top 10 items in the list of people's spend priorities. But the positioning is going to vary because people are going to look back and see how this tax law affects those different brands because all those brands are managed by companies that have to respond to these new regulations. And so you're going to see some creative pricing strategies, and of course, customers are going to react to that. So it's an interesting time to see more cautious spending, but again, you're going to see those dynamics of loyalty playing out.
Right, so much to look out for in 2026. Thank you for painting a picture for us, Professor Uchenna, who is a professor of marketing, Lagos Business School, Director, Africa Retail Academy. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in 2026.
We hope so, God willing.
God willing.
You. Nice talking to you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we get more forecasts and the risks to some of the forecasts going into 2026. That's in a moment. Just stay with us.